Okay. Ezra Hashem, today's daf is daf Samach Beis, and we're going to start from 3 lines on the top. We're going to finish today's the 5th parak, and then we're going to start the 6th parak, Ezra Hashem. So here we're discussing how to deal with non-from people. And what are we discussing? We're discussing is that an Amaretz has a piece of dough. And I guess in those days, you hired somebody to do the kneading of the dough. You know, it was a big job to do kneading of the dough. So he hired a Talmud Chacham to do the kneading of the dough with the intention of that the Talmud Chacham should take off challah, the challah from the dough. Now, what could be the problem? The problem is that when you give back the dough to the Amaretz and the non-from guy, and you give him the truma, you give him the challah, he's going to give it to a kohen and tell him, listen, this challah, I didn't do the kneading, a Talmud Chacham did the kneading. So the kohen is going to think that there's no tumah on this challah, and he'll eat it. And it's having challah with betuma is a big avera for a kohen to eat it. It has to be totally done in purity. So what's the eitzah? How do you deal with an Amaretz who comes over to a chaver? Chaver is a Talmud Chacham, a from person, and asks him to knead the dough for me. So let's see what he says here. Heyid Rabbi Yossi ben Hamashulam, Mishum Rab Chanina Yochanan Achim. Rabbi Yossi ben Hamashulam said a testimony in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, his brother, Sha'ama Mishum Rab Loza ben Chasma, who said it in the name of Rab Loza ben Chasma. A kneader, the guy who does this for a living, and he's a from person. Ein oisin chalas amaretz, ein oisin chalas amaretz betahara. Hi, I'll get over. Jetzt ungeheim. Yeah. Ein oisin chalas amaretz betahara. We don't deal when an amaretz comes to you with a dough. You don't take off challah on behalf of the Amaretz. Again, because when you're going to take off challah's Amaretz and give it back to the Amaretz and says, go give it to the Kohen. Well, he's going to give it to the Kohen. It's going to be tamei, and he's going to tell the Kohen, don't worry about it. I had this good rabbi, I had this good Talmud Chacham who needed the dough for me, so you can eat it, and that's no good. Avol, but when you accept it from the Amaretz, oisin isis chulav b'tahara. What you do is
before you take it from him, you have to check him if he's Amhuas or he's a Talmud Chacham.
Yes. So we're talking about over here. You know for a fact he's an Amoritz, and he's coming to you with not with the dough. He's coming to you with the flour, and you're the one that's going to mix it with water. So when he comes to you with flour, we're going to assume that it's not tamei yet. It's only when it becomes mixed with water. So you can work. Isas chula b'tahara, working with the dough as long as it's tar before you mixed it with water. So now, when it's manufactured or being kneaded, the one that's adding the water is the Talmud Chacham. He's going to knead this dough. That's his business, and then he's going to take off a piece of the dough for challah. He takes off a piece of the dough for challah to give to the kohen, but it's not his dough, it's the Amaretz's dough. So what does he do? Ubanicha bekufsha or ba'anuchsa. You give it in a type of vessel or basket, and you give it in a special basket that's unusual to hold dough in there. And you slip it in there. Ukishaba Amaretz lital, when the Amaretz comes back and says to the kneader, give me back my dough. So here's the dough. And here, in this funny-looking basket, is a little piece of dough. Go ahead and give that to a kohen. So don't touch it. That's what he's saying. Noitel estein. The Amaretz will take both the dough and the little challah that's in the basket. So you don't have to be concerned that, wait a second, if you're giving it to an Amaretz, he might be curious. And he just might lift the basket and touch the challah that's supposed to be given to the kohen, and he's going to be tameh and it's going to become tameh, and he's going to go to the kohen and say, "Hey, I had this done kosher by a Talmud Chacham who needed the dough, a from person who needed the dough, and the kohen is going to eat it." So we're not koshish that once you put it in the kfisha, in a certain type of basket, that the amaretz is going to open it up and touch the challah. Okay, so therefore that's what the kneader can do. Again, here's another example. And let's say an amaretz comes to you with his olives, and you own the press. The frum guy owns the press. So if the olives are not dry already, it's leaking oil, then the olives are tameh. And if you're going to make this olive, and he's asking you to crush the olives to make olive oil, and then you're going to have you're going to make if he's going to give off truma, it's going to be tameh because it started off as tameh. When you accepted it from the amaretz, it was tameh. Now the amaretz is going to go to the kohen and say, "Hey, I had this pressed by a chavera, by a talmid chacham. So you missed the kohen. You can eat it. It's kosher, but it's not kosher because when the kohen, when the chaver received it, when the talmid chacham received it, the presser received it, it was already tameh. So what do you do? Ve'ein oisen truma zeisa betara. If it already is olives and it's already the expression is not tara, it's tameh. When he's giving it to you, it's tameh, and he's saying, "Oh, Mr. Talmud Chacham, press my olives and give me something that I can give truma to the kohen. Don't take it from him." If he gives you dry olives that are not tameh and it's not truma, so then right away you have dry olives. You can assume that when the amaretz gave it to you, it's not tameh yet. So right away you're going to take off a few olives. The noitel hemeni kidei truma. You're going to take a little bit off, like 3 olives, and give it separate it for truma on behalf of the amaretz. And you put it in the guy who is the presser has special vessels designated
the water.
Yeah, to hold olives. And then
before you put it in the water.
Right, before you put it in, right. But in here, it's not putting it in water, it's pressing it. As soon as you press it, it's oil comes. When an amaretz comes to take, when the amaretz is going to come to take the oil plus the olives that you separated from truma, he can take both of them. He can take the oil plus the little in a little cup. He's going to have olives that he's supposed to give to the kohen. And we're not worried that the amaretz on his way to the kohen is going to touch the olives that is truma before he gives it to the kohen. Now, but the question is, why should a guy who's a frum guy and he's running a kneading business, he needs dough on behalf of people, or a pressing olives on behalf of business, why do we allow him to deal with amaretzim? It can lead to bad things that could lead to a kohen coming to eat challah that's tameh or truma that's tameh. Why do we allow that?
Because he tried to make him a tzaddik from the mamhu. He tried to make him a good deed, a mitzvah.
But the Gemara says nachbesa as the Talmud Chacham daf ben apanusa. Rabbi Yochanan, it's impossible for a person to be in business and not do business with non-frum people, for non-amaretz. He can't say, "Oh, right. No, Mishim kidei chayav the gabol," because the gabol is the person who needs the dough. He needs to make a living. Mishim kidei chayav the badod, with the presser, the olive presser, also needs to make a living. So therefore, that's why they allow to do business with the amaretz. Utzricha, and we need you to teach me that that these two types of businesses are allowed to do business with an amaretz. The ashmin and gabal. If we would just say a guy who does kneading, it's before the mixers. They need professional big bolvans to be able to be big strong people to do the kneading. So if it would say ashmin and gabal, a kneader can do business with the amaretz mishum de loy nafesh agre, because he's not making a big profit. So since his business is very very low profit margin, so we allowed him to do business with an amaretz. Avabada, the oppressor, the nafesh agra, he gets a big profit. to press somebody's olive, there's a big profit margin. Emaloi, I would think that he's not allowed to do business with Amaretz. He's making money. The Ashmin in Badad, if you would just say me, a presser is allowed to do business, an olive presser is allowed to do business with Amaretz, because that person, he doesn't do business all the time with Amaretz. It's only seasonal that the presses are open during a certain period of time of the year. Most of the time it's closed. So although he's making a big profit, but it's not every day. Aval Gabal, but somebody who's a kneader, the shchichle, there's always people around, and maybe there's enough from Yidden to do business with, so maybe we should not allow him to do any business with the Amaretz. Emaloi, I would think not. Tzricha, that's fine also. Now, two more. The Gemara just wraps this up. The question is, you're giving back the Amaretz, his dough, and you're giving back to him also in a little basket, a funny-looking basket, which you normally don't put dough, and you tell him, be careful, Amaretz, you have to give it straight to the kohen because it's tahar. Why did you choishish that maybe he's going to touch it? That's Gemara's question. You said before, you give it to the challah into a special basket. He takes both his own big dough, and he takes the small in the vessel. He has the little piece of dough challah that he's supposed to run and give it to the kohen. You don't have to be concerned that he's going to touch it before he gives it to the kohen. The curiosity kills the cat. Why shouldn't I be choishet that the Amaretz is going to look inside and touch the challah? The Amilei, because we warn the Amaretz, Chazi, be very careful. If you're going to touch this challah, that this piece of challah that you're supposed to give to the kohen, it's going to passel the whole dough. You're going to have tevel in your whole dough, and you won't be able to eat your dough. So maybe the Gemara says, maybe he doesn't care about that. Maybe he doesn't care if he eats his dough without giving the challah to the kohen. So the Gemara says, no, he's a type of Amaretz that does care. He's coming to you to try to do it right. He's dafka going to a from yid to do the kneading. So it must be he's concerned that he wants to get the challah right with no problems of tahara. So if he's coming to you, if you give it back to him with instruction, and Mr. Amaretz, don't touch that challah, give it straight to the kohen in this vessel, then we trust that he's going to listen and not touch it, not touch it. Umamar, same thing by the oil. You take a couple of olives and you put it into truma, and you put it in the special kalim that belong to the Talmud Chacham, from Yid. When the Amaretz comes to take the oil plus these olives, so he can take both, and we're not concerned that maybe when you're going to give him the olives in a special keli, he's going to look inside and touch those olives before he gives it to the kohen. And the kohen's not going to know that it's tummy. He's going to tell the kohen, I went to a special from Yid to do the pressing of my olives. So why don't we concern ourselves? Maybe he's going to touch it. By the dough, you're putting it into a special type of vessel that you normally don't put dough in, so he'll know not to touch it. What kind of recognition he's going to know not to touch it? In other words, what is reminding the Amaretz when he's holding this vessel that has olives that he's supposed to give it to the kohen, not to open the vessel and touch the olives inside? Answers the Gemara, the manachle, you give it to him bekli glolim ukli avonim kli adama. You give it to him in like a stone keli or a vessel made out of manure or made out of earth. So therefore, it doesn't become tameh from the outside. And Amaretz, even when he shakes something, doesn't become tameh. And because it's a funny looking type of keli, he's not going to open it up and touch the olives before he gives it to the kohen. So the Gemara says, ihachi ma'iri decharva. If it's a type of vessel called avonim, adama, and glolim, why does it have to belong to the from Yid? It could even belong to the Amaretz. I feel the Amaretz name, even if it belonged to the Amaretz, as long as you're putting it into a keli that doesn't mitama and cannot makabel tuma, cannot be susceptible to tuma, it should be fine. Answers the Gemara, Hachinami coming. That's exactly what the Mishnah is, what he said. You put the olives in a type of vessel that even a Talmud Chacham would use such from Yid would use such a vessel. It's a vessel that is not Makabel Toma. You give it to the Amaretz, and you can trust the Amaretz that if you give him instructions and you say, don't open it, don't touch it, just give it straight to the Kohen, we trust that he's going to do it and he's not going to be Matama the Truma. No, next piece of Gemara, now it goes interesting. If you see a guy working on his field, you're going in Eretz Yisrael, and you see a guy who owns a property and he's working his field on Shvius, the Mishnah says you're allowed to help him out. You're allowed to start working with him because he owns the field. So the Gemara says, Machzikin, you're allowed to work and do work on a field in Shemitah, although it belongs to a guy. Rav Dimi said in the name of Rab, Ein oidrim im hagoy b'shvius. You're not allowed to hoe, right, or rake, or whatever you're doing with a guy in Shemitah. The Ein koishlim shalom l'goy. And when you say hello to a guy, this is another thing. Don't say hello, shalom, shalom twice. We're going to discuss that in a moment. So put that into parentheses. But you see clearly that if you see a guy working on a land in Shemitah, you're not allowed to go there and say, hey, let me help you. So what does the Mishnah say? Machnikin yedei goyim b'shvius. Answers the Gemara, there's something called helping physically, and there's something called a verbal encouragement. Like tzricha, the Mishnah is teaching you, you're allowed to tell the guy, you should be successful. Tis chazek. Yehoda Rav Yehuda would meet a guy, he would say, Amalu achzuke. He would say, be matzliach. Rav Sheshes Amalu asharta, another way of expressing matzliach. And hence also when before you meet, you depart from your friend, he's going to work. You always say you should be matzliach. Well, the Mishnah says that even on Shemitah, mipnei darchei shalom, you don't want to show to the goyim that you're angry at them. You have to have peace with the goyim. You respect them. So if they own a property in Eretz Yisrael and they're working, an Arab is working on a piece of land in Shemitah, you're allowed to wish him success. You're allowed to say hello to a guy. You're allowed to say shalom aleichem to a guy. So the Gemara says, what's the chiddush? Hashtem achzuki machzikin she'alam b'shloima meboya. You're allowed to. You just told me that if you see a guy, you're allowed to wish him success. Certainly, you're allowed to say hello to a guy. What is the Mishnah teaching you? Omer Rav Yevid says, Lo nitzrucha ella liyoim chagam. No, I don't need it normally to teach you allowed to say hello. That I know, but I need it when it's a special holiday that they're serving their avodah zaras, because. And I might think that if they're serving their guy, if they're serving their holidays, then you're limited. That you cannot say hello to a guy. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa, lo yikonis odam lebeisa shel goy b'yom chagoy v'yitin lo shalom. You're not allowed to enter the house of a guy if it's his holiday and he's doing stanking his getchkela, and you say v'yitin lo shalom and say hello to him and wish him peace. Why? Because he'll thank his getchka because of you. See, I'm being honored by the Jews. So if they're in their house, you're not allowed to go into the house and give him shalom. But to totally ignore him, matzoy b'shik, if you find him in the street, noisin loy b'safa rafa over kavod reish, you give him you give him a hello in a low voice and with a serious intent. You don't smile. That you can do if it's the Yom Chag, if it's his day of his Yom Tov. Now, the Gemara just ends off this paragraph. Rav Huna Rav Chizda have a yatbe. Rav Huna and Rav Chizda was sitting. Chalav Azel Geniva. This person, Geniva, passed in front of them. Geniva is a type of Amoira who was the biggest Talmud Chacham, but he had a cantankerous personality. He was a difficult person. So this Rav Huna and Rav Chizda are sitting, and this Geneva, we call him, this Groisa Talmud Chacham, but a Bal Machlokes passes in front of them. So one said to another, Rav China maybe said to Rav Chizda, let's get up. He's a Talmud Chacham. The Bar Uryan he's a Groisa Talmud Chacham, and he knows how to paskin. So the other one answered, should we get up to somebody who makes a lot of machlokes? Apparently, he was without his opponents, without he caused a lot of problem in machlokes. So that's why they were debating whether to stand for him. In the meantime, that they were debating whether they're supposed to get up for a Talmud Chacham. One of them came. Geniva came. Amalahu, he said to him, Shalom Aleichem Alchei. He said to Rav Huna Rav Chizda, hello, my kings. He called them Rav Huna Rav Chizda, Rav kings. Shalom Aleichem Alchei. He said it twice. My kings. So he said, Geniva showed respect to Rav Huna Rav Chizda by calling them kings. Now, why do you call a Talmud Chacham a Tzurva Merabbanim a king? Amalahu. So Amr late. So they asked Geniva, how do you know somebody who's learning all day is called a king? So Geniva answers, the Ksiv, it says in the Pasuk, be through my Torah, Malachim Yemleichu, kings will be crowned. In other words, the Torah, by somebody who's dedicating his life to Torah, automatically the Torah puts a crown on that person's head, and therefore it's okay to call a Talmud Chacham a melech. So they asked him another question. Then why do you have to say it twice? How do you know you say shalom to a king twice? If you call us a king, how do you know you say it twice? So he said to them, he said to them, the reason why you call it twice, how do you know you say twice hello to a king? David HaMelech was called Shalom Lecha Ben Yishai. So it's a pasuk there that Amasai called David Shalom twice because David was the king. Amalei, so they said to him, Litam Armidi, they asked Geniva, do you want to eat something? Amalahu, he said to them, Hachi Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said the name of Rav. Also, a person's not allowed to taste anything until he gives food to his animal. First, you have to give food to your animal, and then you're allowed to eat. So therefore, even in that brief conversation, they were debating whether they should stand up for him. They learned a number of different things. First of all, a person's not allowed to eat until he feeds his animals, and that Talmidei Chachamim are called melech. And when for a melech, if you meet a melech, you're supposed to say not shalom once, shalom twice. So hadan Allah hanizakim. We go to the next Mishnah. Ha'omer, someone says, by the way, it's one of the biggest mitzvahs is when you're at a chuppah and you see an old person walking down the chuppah aisle. That's the only mitzvah the haraisa is to get up for the chassan, maybe because he's a melech or he's on his way to do a mitzvah. But somebody who is over 70 walking down the aisle of the chuppah, there's more of a mitzvah midaraisa of a darta pnei zaken to get up for such a person. Anyway, ha'omer, someone says, the new Mishnah Parak Shishi. Ha'omer, someone says to a person, a guy wants to give a get to his wife, and he says to a shliach, his kabel get zeli ishti, I want you to accept this get for behalf of my wife. So, or he says to the person, hoylech get zeli ishti, very important word. He says to the person, hoylech, deliver this get to the wife. Remember this word, hoylech means to deliver. So he makes a shliach. You don't have to give a get directly to your wife. You could make a shliach. So as long as the person did not give the get to the woman, if the husband wants to call it back, yachzor, he could call it back, and the get didn't take effect because he's saying, deliver it to my wife. Or he's saying, even though he says accept it on behalf of my wife, well, he can't make a shliach la kabbalah. He cannot tell this guy to accept it on behalf of his wife because this is detrimental for the wife to become divorced. So it's only divorce when it gets into the hand of the wife, and as long as the get didn't get into the hand of the wife, he can retract. Ho'isha, but if the woman sends a shliach to accept the get, she said, his kabel li gite. He told the man, you accept a get on behalf of me. If he wants to retract, he cannot retract. Because once the shliach now represents the woman. And as soon as the shliach receives the get, the husband cannot retract. Therefore, but if the husband would say, to her shaliach. I don't want you to accept this get on her behalf. Don't accept it. I want you to actually give it to her. So he wants to turn the shliach lekabbalah into a shliach lahaylacha. Elahaylech, deliver it, v'sein and give it to her. So in other words, he's saying, I don't want the get to take effect until she gets it into her hand. In that case, if the husband wants to retract on the get, yachzor, he's permitted to retract on it. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, Rav Shimon says, if he didn't say hoylech, deliver the get, he said a toll, take it. So now, if he wants to retract, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, then he's not allowed to retract. By saying tuli gitai, then he's not allowed to, because he's basically saying, accept it on behalf of my wife. And therefore, that would not allow him to any retraction, because Zog the Gemara, Amalei Rav Acha Bereder, Rav Ivel Rav Ashi. Rav Acha said to Rav Ashi like this. In the second case, when a guy says Hoylech gets el isha, guy tells a man, the Baal tells the shliach, deliver this get to my wife. Because she didn't make him a shliach, it's only the man that's making him the shliach lekabbalah. She didn't make him a shliach to accept. Then that's why he could still retract as long as she doesn't receive it. That's what we learned in the second case of the Mishnah. But if she would accept him as a shliach lekabbalah, if she would make him a shliach lekabbalah to accept the get, rotza lachsa liachsa. Once he would say this word hoylech, deliver it, and she and this is his. If this is her shliach, if she was sent this person to become the shliach to accept the get, and instead of saying, here it is, well, he said, hoylech, deliver it to her. So he's basically saying, that's almost like saying, acquire it on her behalf. So that, shmami no, from here we can see, then he wouldn't be, he wouldn't be able to retract. Shmami no, hoylech, if someone says, deliver something, his chidame, is it like the guy should acquire it? In other words, if I want to give a gift to somebody, and if I want to give a gift to somebody, and we had this machlokes before, if you use such a vague language, I say to somebody, here's $1,000, deliver it to somebody. What does the word deliver it mean? What does hoylech mean? Doesn't mean deliver it means you should acquire it on his behalf, and therefore, as soon as I gave it and said hoylech, I can't retract, or hoylech means exactly what it means, deliver it, and he doesn't acquire it until the recipient gets it. And as long as the recipient does not get it, I could call back the shliach. Well, from our Mishnah, we see the Gemara wants to make a diak that if someone says hoylech, if she would have made the shliach lekabbalah, and the husband would say hoylech, deliver it, then there would be no way for the husband to retract. So we see from here the word hoylech. We're examining that word hoylech, which was a common word. Deliver something is kischidame, is as if you're telling the person acquire it on the behalf of the woman. Answers the Gemara, loy, not true. Loy l'meimelach, I will tell you hoylech lav kischidame. When you say hoylech, it's not like you're saying acquire it on something on my behalf. And really, even if she did make the shliach lekabbalah, if you said hoylech, he could retract. But the reason why it doesn't say that she made a shliach lekabbalah, because it wants to tell me a situation where only he's making the shliach, and if he uses a strange language, iskabel get liishi, the first case of the Mishnah, I might think that's not a good shliach. In other words, look at the first case of the Mishnah. Mishnah starts off, if a man says to a shliach, he says, accept this get for my wife. Well, he cannot tell him to become a shliach lekabbalah, because only the woman can make a shliach lekabbalah. He could only say, bring this get to my wife. So by using the word hiskabel, I might think the person's not a shliach at all. I would think that the husband is not allowed to make a shliach lekabbalah. So afagav the mata gita liyada loy have a gita. Even if the shliach ends up bringing this get to her, it won't be a get, because the husband appointed this man with using the wrong language. He was like speaking Hungarian. Accept it on behalf of my wife. Well, it's the wrong word. And he should say, bring it to my wife. So I might think in that case, if that guy is not a good shliach, he meant to say, accept it and bring it and deliver it. He just didn't finish his words. Some people don't finish sentences. So that's why he would still be considered. So you can't prove hoylech kischi, hoylech lav kischi. Anyway, the Gemara is going to bring two more rayas. Now we learned in the Mishnah. If the woman said, accept my get, then he cannot retract. And what did he say? It's going back to this on this first part of the Mishnah. He must have said either to the guy, hoylech, and even though she said hiskabel and he said hoylech, we see that hoylech is kizchi. That's what the Gemara says. Loishna kabbalah, loishna halacha. And for the Gemara, kabbalah. It's only if she said she made a shliach kabbalah, and he also said hiskabel on behalf of the wife. That's when it works. But if he would say halacha, then halacha, he's trying to say, you know what? I don't want you to bring the get to my wife, deliver it, and then she'll be kaided. Tashma, come in here. The fichach im amaloi habala im efshi shetekabelo el hoylech v'tenla im rotza lachsa yaksa. Here, she made a shliach lekabala, and the husband says, I don't want you to be a shliach lekabala. I want you to hoylech, bring it, deliver it to her, and give it to her. So then he could always still retract. It's only because he said, I don't want you to be a shlich l'kabbalah. That's why he could always retract. If he didn't say, I don't want you to be a shlich l'kabbalah, he would just say hoylech. If he would just say hoylech, that wouldn't be enough. That would be hoylech is kischi. He was like saying to her, I agree that she's the shlich l'kabbalah. Deliver it, and deliver it means acquire it right now. If he would just didn't say when someone uses the word hoylech, deliver it, it means acquire it now. So the Gemara says Dilma behelech. Maybe what the Mishnah, he didn't say hoylech. You missed. There's a printing mistake in the Mishnah. He said here is the get. He didn't say the word. If someone says deliver the get, so deliver means deliver it, and it doesn't take effect until she gets it. But if he says hoylech, here's the get. Well, if he says here's the get, so as long if he didn't say I don't want you to be a shlich l'kabbalah by saying heilech, here's the get, he's accepting that that this guy's the shlich l'kabbalah, and the get will take effect right away. Just give me 1 more minute. We'll just start the next Gemara's question, so we'll just make up time. 1 more minute. Pshita. We learned that a man can make a shliach and a woman can make a shliach. But the man making a shliach is making a shliach who's of the same gender. Man can make another man a shliach to bring a get. A woman can make a woman to be a shliach because if she's a female, she can make a shliach a female. The Gemara's question is, what about the reverse? That's Gemara's question. Pshita, let us ask this question. Ish hava shliach lahaylocha. A man could bring could make another male to be a shliach to bring a get. Shekain baal moilech get liishtei, because the man, a husband, could bring a get for his wife, so he can make another man to be a shliach. The isha havi shliach lekabbalah, and a woman can make a shliach to accept a get, a female to accept a get on behalf of her, because a female could be a shliach to accept a get. Shekain isha mekabeles gita miad baala. So because a woman could accept a get on behalf of her husband. So that's for sure. Man can make a man a shliach. The woman receiving the get can make another woman a shliach. Now the Gemara's question is, and this will stop. We'll leave with the question. Ish, if you do the reverse, ish lekabbalah, can a woman hire a man to accept her get? Can a woman hire a man to accept the get? V'ha'isha laylocha. Can a man send a woman to bring a get to the wife? Maybe if the Torah is specific that says that the man and woman could hire shlichem, maybe the Torah only required them to demanded from them to hire shlichem of the same gender that they are. How do you know that they can make shluchim that are the opposite gender that they are? So that's the question that the Gemara is right now discussing. We'll discuss it. We'll finish it off, Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow.
Thank you.